the psychosocial development of older Black women. And in my dissertation, I specifically wanted to understand how Black women negotiated their understandings of sexuality through informal learning environments. I was unclear on the direction that I was going, cloudy in my judgment and in my understanding, especially with qualitative research. So initially I was drawing on all of these white-centered discourses to inform my study. And I mean, that's the way that I knew, right? That's what we were introduced to. So that's the traditional approach that I took, especially in qualitative. So when I went to Dr. Bhattacharya and told her, you know, this is the study that I'm thinking of, this is the way I'm thinking of doing it, we had multiple conversations about what this would look like. And from my perspective, you may remember this as well, from my perspective, I wanted to play it safe, right? I wanted to play it safe. You wanted to push the boundaries a bit. And with me coming from such a place of mistrust, I was pretty apprehensive, you know, so then, yeah, I wanted to play it safe, so apprehensive in my engagement with her as well. So she told me, just start reading literature from women of color. Start reading those stories, start reading Black women, everything you can. Novels, novellas, short stories, everything you can. Women of color, Black women, and then jot down the things that are resonating with you, right? So the tropes, how they are navigating these spaces, what they're saying, what they're not saying, feelings, isolation, loneliness, love, everything, write it down. So I started doing that, and it sounded easy, right? But it was not as easy as I had thought at all, because I had read a lot of these things already, but not from the perspective of looking at it to inform my dissertation and to inform my onto-epistemologies, right? So it was culturally, I had read these things, but not looking at it from this framing or from this lens. So it definitely wasn't an easy task or easy feat that she had tasked me with. But eventually, we read these and we constructed these constructs to inform Black women-centric narrative inquiry, and we called it Black narrative inquiry. So in my dissertation, it was called Black feminine narrative inquiry at first, but after discussions, we used Cynthia Dillard's "And Darkened" to disrupt the oppressive language and transform the language used to understand the mental, spiritual, and intellectual epistemologies of marginalized people through various culturally constructed contexts, right? So while we mainly used text to inform and darken narrative inquiry, it's also encompassing of music, it's also encompassing of art, visual narrative, so many other art forms that inform, right, Black women-centric narratives. So we then called it Darkened Narrative Inquiry. So throughout this process, I was journaling. I was writing things down, writing everything down, right? Because the expectation that I had come from in a different department to this expectation now was so much more rigorous, was so much more, I had to really understand what it is that I was understanding, reading, knowing, talking about. I had to really understand that. So throughout this process, I began journaling. And not necessarily knowing that it was journaling, I was just writing everything down. Everything I heard, everything I read, the things in class, patterns, themes, understandings, new thoughts, developments, how I was evolving, everything, I began to write those down. And then with the guidance of Dr. Bhattacharya, these narratives and themes began to evolve and included the elements of pain, the elements of love, secrets, humor, family, right? So all of these things that that I'd read in these novels and novellas and short stories and all of these things from these women of color, right, that I could use to situate my own study. So that's how that came about with the narrative and darkened narrative inquiry.